Now let's talk about making changes to a table using the graphical tools in the SQL Server Management Studio. Now this starts off very simple and it kind of gets complicated on us. So let's step through this, and I want you to understand it without getting frustrated when you try to do this for the first time. What we're going to do here is we're going to add another column to this DBO Mark table. We added level. If you remember, we originally created this table back in a video entitled Creating a Table. Then we went in with changing a table in that video, and we added this level column down here on the end using T-SQL code. So now we're going to go add another column. Now, if I right click and go to design, notice this looks a lot like Access, does it not? You Access folks are pretty happy at this point. You know just what to do, right? I can come down here and I can just add my column. Middle initial, come over here and I'll make it a tiny integer, and I'll just leave the nulls the way they are, and I'll hit tab to get over there. Now I want you to notice what happens here. I'll close this out and it says, do you want to save the table? And I say yes. And I'll come back over here and refresh, and everybody looks happy, right? There's my middle initial. It's in my table. Well, what happened there is the Management Studio, when I make changes to tables, it can change that table structure without having to drop and recreate the table. Now, when it drops and recreates the table, if it ever has to do that, and there's data in that table, it has to maintain that data and put it back. And anytime that happens, it should make you nervous. So you should have a good backup before you do that, and so forth. Microsoft has built a safety net in here for you. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to right click on my table and go to design, and adding a column on the end is pretty straightforward, pretty standard, no problem. But there's a really cool feature here. Notice I'm going to left click on this column over here on this left square, and then I'm going to left click again and just drag it up and put it in a different location. Now when I try to save it, I'll close it, and it says, do you want to save the following items? And I say yes. It says, whoa, wait a minute. Saving changes is not permitted. The changes you have made require the following tables to be dropped and recreated. And you either have made changes that can't be recreated or enabled the option prevent saving changes. So I will cancel this, and it'll give me the user canceled out, and that'll go away. If I want to fix it so that it will work, I'm going to go up to Tools, come down to Options, and on the Designer tab right here, notice Prevent Saving Changes that require table recreation. Now, what's the big deal there? When table recreation happens, it's got to drop all those records out and then reload them. Anything could go wrong. Plus, it's going to cause some locking. It could cause deadlocks. It's going to slow down because anybody trying to connect to that table, when I do that, they're going to have to wait. And it could just cause a mess in a production environment. And so for that reason, you want to really think through this process. Is it really worth relocating that thing? And you'll just have to go out and look in the documentation. Some alterations in the graphical tool here require the table to be dropped and recreated. Others don't. And so for that reason, most DBAs use T-SQL commands to make alterations to tables, but you can go however you would like. But notice I can uncheck this and not prevent saving those changes. Then I'm going to come back out here, right click on DBO Mark, go back into design. I'm going to grab middle initial, pull it up here. All right. And what I'll do before I do that is I'm going to go out and do another query. Just click on this again. It'll give me another tab right here. Okay. And I'm going to do a select asterisk from Mark. And notice my caps don't matter. And notice I put a line in here. Mark Long, person ID 34, age 34, level 3, middle initial, null. Okay. So now I'm going to go out here and I dragged the middle initial up here, reordered the columns. I will close this out. Do you want to save changes? Yes. It made the changes. And if I go over here and right click and refresh, you're going to notice middle initial is indeed up here. But what happened to my table contents? Well, I will come back up here. I'll highlight this command so you can see what I'm running. Execute it again. Notice my data is still there, but that table had to be dropped and recreated. Now, you just need to be aware that's going on because in a little example like this, in a training class, and I'm the only person connected to the database, and there's only one record, no big deal. But if this is a production database with maybe a couple of hundred users in there simultaneously manipulating data in a bunch of tables, and any number of those could be working on this particular table, and I do a drop and recreate, it could create some pretty significant delays and issues. And again, I don't want to be pessimistic here, but anything could go wrong in that particular situation, especially if you have a lot of data on that table. So just keep that in mind. Go out there and read and dig on that subject just a little bit. But for the purposes of the exam, you can make these changes out here in the SQL Server Management Studio. You could see the scenario on the exam about making changes out here graphically. That's how you do it. A lot of experienced administrators will go out here and do this. There's some other tricks that we won't go into here. This is not a tricks course, but I've given you a couple anyway. But that is how to graphically alter a database table.